Now, let's look at these two bones. We've got these two bones. This is the radius and the ulna, okay? And remember, the way I remember them, it's if you put your elbows down on the table, your ulna is the bone on the bottom because it's underneath. The radius is the one toward the middle. See, so ulna on the bottom, radius on the top. Radius on the top, ulna on the bottom. And they can pivot, they can do this rotational motion. And the way you recognize the bones when they're on their own is if you look at the radius, it has this rounded end, okay? It has this rounded end. And then this is the rest of the radius. The ulna up here, it's got the what? The olecranon process, which fits into the humerus, to the olecranon fossa, okay? Fits in. If we come over here, you see right, oh, got a piece of chewing gum there. Don't know how that got there, okay? But if we take this bone, this is the posterior distal side of the humerus, and stick it into the proximal side posterior, it fits in like that, and we get an elbow joint. Isn't that neat? So see this big one that sticks up a little further, that's the ulna, and this one is the radius. Okay, this one's the radius. So let's take a look at the ulna separately. Now let's take a closer look at the ulna. The ulna is the bone that goes underneath when it's the bone down here along the bottom side of your arm. And the most fascinating thing of the proximal end is this is called the olecranon process. Sticks out, fits in the olecranon fossa of the distal end of the humerus in the back and forms the elbow joint. This is called the trochlear notch. It gives you that pivoting in that elbow joint. And this right here is called the radial notch, and it's the notch into which the head of the humerus just fits right there and goes back and forth to give you that rotary movement. Okay, then this prominence down here is called the coronoid process. Okay, down here is the ulnar tuberosity. The ulnar tuberosity. That's just a little bigger bump, just a little elevation. And then down here on the distal end, you have the styloid process, or just styloid, and then you have the head of the ulna. Most of the bones have their head on the proximal end, close to the body, but the ulna has its head on the distal end. That makes it a little bit different. So that's the ulna. Let's review it very quickly. Here is the what? That is the olecranon process, the trochlear notch, the radial notch, the ulnar tuberosity, the head down here, the head's at the distal end, and then the styloid process. Okay, now let's look at the ulna. The ulna, the head of the ulna is very fascinating to me. It's almost like a donut shape, and it's so you can get that rotary motion. And behind the neck, behind the head is usually an expanded end of the bone. Then they call the narrower region following, they call that the neck. So we got the head of the radius, and then the neck, and then we have the radial tuberosity. See that bump right there? You can see it, but if you can't see these bumps, you can feel them. Then there's ridges on the bone called the interosseous ridges, and then down here you have the styloid process, and then you have a notch. Here, let me make sure you see it. The styloid process, and then you have a notch called the ulnar notch. Okay, the ulnar notch. So let's review that. The head of the radius, the neck of the radius, the radial tuberosity, the interosseous ridges, the styloid process, and then finally the ulnar notch. Okay, that's where the head fits in there. Remember, the head of the ulna is on the distal end. That's very unusual. Okay, so now we're going on down the arm. The next thing we come to as we come down, this right here is the radius, and so you can tell it's the radius because of the rounded head. See how that is, and it comes down into the hand, to the wrist. Okay, and the wrist right here, these bones right here, the wrist bones are called what? The carpal bones. Then the bones in the hand are called the what? Metacarpal bones. Then the bones in the fingers are called the phalanges. You got proximal phalange, middle phalange, and then distal phalange. So you got a proximal, that's metacarpal back there. This is proximal phalange, middle phalange, distal phalange down to the fingertips. So I hope this helps you with the bones of the upper appendage, which is part of the appendicular skeleton.